Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something simple but uncomfortable. Why do some people fall apart under pressure while others move through the storm without flinching? Think about the last time life shook you. Maybe it was a conversation that didn't go your way, a relationship that broke down, a plan that collapsed. Now, imagine someone else in that same situation, but they didn't panic. They didn't lash out. They didn't spiral. They simply paused. They adjusted. And then they moved forward with calm and conviction. This is not magic. This is not luck. This is inner strength. And in a world that constantly rewards noise, calm people are quietly winning. We live in an age where people confuse loudness for leadership, urgency for importance, and reaction for strength. But real strength doesn't shout, it doesn't scramble, it doesn't need to be the center of attention. Real strength listens, watches, understands, and then acts with intention. Calm people win because they don't give their power away. They don't let someone else's chaos dictate their clarity. They don't allow temporary emotions to destroy permanent relationships. They don't chase the need to prove. They anchor themselves in the power to grow. When everyone else is losing their heads, they remain still. Not because they don't care, but because they've built the discipline to choose response over reaction. They've spent enough time in solitude to know their own center, and so they don't need external approval to feel grounded. Being calm isn't passive, it's active self-mastery. It's an ability to hold fire without letting it consume you. It's choosing not to be ruled by fear or provoked by drama or baited by insecurity. It's saying, I know who I am, I know what I value, and I know what I will or won't give my energy to. In that calm, there's vision, there's awareness, there's direction. Calm people lead because others feel safe around them. When everything feels unstable, people look for those who are steady, not those who are screaming. It starts with solitude, with time spent listening inward, with moments of reflection instead of constant distraction. From that place of silence comes clarity. From clarity comes confidence. And from confidence comes calm. That's the quiet path to real power. And the truth is, when you stop fighting to control everything around you, you begin mastering everything within you. That's why calm people always win, not because they fight harder, but because they fight smarter, with purpose, with discipline, with peace. Calm is often misunderstood. People mistake it for weakness, indifference, or a lack of urgency, but calm is none of those things. In truth, calm is a display of strength that very few people master. It's the result of inner discipline, not the absence of emotion. Calm doesn't mean you're unaffected, it means you're aware. It means you're present enough to see clearly and steady enough to decide wisely. When someone remains calm in a moment of pressure, it doesn't mean they're disconnected. It means they've chosen not to be controlled. Calm is the space between stimulus and response. It's that pause that allows you to ask, is this reaction serving me? Most people skip that pause. They rush into reaction. They respond to every provocation, every insult, every inconvenience. And in doing so, they hand over their power. The calm person doesn't react immediately. They breathe. They observe, they take in the full picture before they respond. That's not because they're slow, it's because they're intentional. They understand that their energy is valuable, and more importantly, they know that the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more clarity. When everyone is panicking, the calm person is the one others turn to, not because they know all the answers, but because they're not adding to the chaos. Calm people understand that emotions are information, not instructions. Just because we feel anger doesn't mean we must act on it. Just because we feel fear doesn't mean we must run. Feelings are valid, but they aren't always true. And when someone can hold their feelings without letting their feelings hold them, they gain a rare kind of power, the ability to stay grounded in the middle of emotional storms. You'll notice something about people who've learned to remain calm. They don't jump into every argument. They don't feel the need to prove themselves in every room. They don't chase validation. That's because they've done the inner work. They've spent time understanding their fears, confronting their insecurities, and learning that peace is more powerful than pride. Why use calm? You don't get there by accident. You get there through reflection, through solitude, through struggle. You get there when you stop looking for external calm and start building it internally. Calm is a decision. Every day you get to choose how you'll show up. You get to decide whether you'll be a thermometer or a thermostat. A thermometer simply reflects the temperature around it. It goes up and down depending on its environment. But a thermostat sets the temperature. It decides what kind of energy will exist in a room. Calm people are thermostats. They don't get pulled into every emotional spike. They hold their own emotional center and, as a result, influence the energy of others. This ability to stay calm doesn't just affect the individual, it impacts everyone around them. In teams, families, relationships, and communities, calm creates safety. When people feel safe, they open up, they share more honestly, they collaborate more willingly, they trust more deeply. And that's when the best ideas surface. That's when true connection happens. Calm doesn't just win because it's peaceful. It wins because it creates the conditions where everyone else can rise. Stillness is not about doing nothing. It's about being aware of everything. In a world of constant movement, stillness becomes a form of intelligence. Calm people don't just see what's in front of them. They see what's beneath it. They look past the words being said and into the emotions being expressed. They notice the shift in tone, the hesitation before a sentence, the tension behind a smile. This awareness gives them an edge. It helps them respond to the real issue, not just the surface-level problem. Calm people don't rush to fill silence. They're not uncomfortable with pauses. In fact, they welcome them, because in that space, clarity emerges. They're not looking to dominate conversations. They're listening for what isn't being said. That kind of listening isn't passive, it's strategic. It builds influence, not just because it earns trust, but because it gives insight. And insight always leads to better decisions. Calm is not about escaping difficulty. It's about learning how to navigate it with grace. It's about staying composed in the face of deadlines, pressure, criticism, and uncertainty. And that doesn't mean someone is always emotionally unshaken. It means they've built enough resilience to return to center quickly. They recover faster, they think clearer, and in doing so, they outperform those who are driven by urgency and anxiety. There is a confidence that comes with calm, a quiet assurance that doesn't need to shout. People often confuse that with detachment or aloofness, but it's the opposite. It's presence. Calm people are not absent from the moment. They are fully in it, fully aware, fully choosing. Their calm is not ignorance, it's mastery. In high-stakes environments, calm becomes a strategic advantage. When tensions are high, the person who keeps their cool holds the room. They see patterns others miss. They avoid impulsive mistakes. They build credibility simply by being stable. And because of that, they are often given greater responsibility, deeper trust, and more influence. Not because they asked for it, but because they earned it through presence. The most impressive leaders are not those who talk the most or act the fastest. They are the ones who remain centered when others lose their footing. And that doesn't mean they're emotionless. It means they've developed emotional discipline. They've trained themselves to feel everything, but to act from wisdom, not from fear. That kind of training doesn't come from books or courses. It comes from life, from experience, from learning through failure. Calm people are often those who've faced significant difficulty and used it to build inner resilience. They've learned that reacting rarely helps, that urgency is often a trap, that the best solutions come from a quiet, thoughtful space. Not from panic. Stillness sharpens perception. It allows people to see patterns, risks, and opportunities that others overlook in their rush. When your mind isn't racing, your vision expands. You start to notice the dynamics of a room. You hear what's really being said beneath the noise. You begin to make better decisions, not just faster ones, but wiser ones. And in the long run, it's wisdom that wins. It's easy to look at calm people and assume they were born that way, but calm is not a personality trait, it's a practiced skill. It's developed through daily choices, through slowing down, through building rituals that create inner space, through reflecting before reacting, through choosing silence over retaliation, through learning to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it. And once you build it, calm becomes your baseline, your foundation. It doesn't mean you won't face challenges. It means you'll face them without losing yourself. It means you'll move through difficulty without making things worse. It means you'll handle pressure in a way that lifts others instead of spreading fear. That's why calm people always win. Not because they fight harder, but because they no longer fight battles that don't matter. They save their energy for what counts. They invest their attention wisely. They know the cost of every emotional reaction, and they choose their peace more often than they choose their pride. Some people walk into a room and shift the energy without saying a word, not because they dominate, but because they embody a certain presence. Calm, composed, grounded. That presence doesn't come from a need to control. It comes from a deep trust in who they are. It comes from an internal anchor that doesn't drift with every wave. Inner strength begins the moment a person stops seeking stability from others and begins building it within. The world will always be unpredictable. People will disappoint you, plans will collapse, circumstances will shift without warning. If peace depends on those things going perfectly, it's temporary at best. But when peace is rooted in who you are, it can't be shaken by what happens to you. Control is an illusion that exhausts the mind. So much of what people chase, approval, status, perfection, is driven by the fear of losing control. Thing to do, but the strongest individuals aren't those who tighten their grip on everything around them. They're the ones who let go of what they can't manage and double down on what they can, who they are, how they think, and how they show up. When a person trusts themselves deeply, they're no longer moved by every opinion or setback. That doesn't mean they ignore feedback. It means they're not defined by it. They listen without absorbing. They adjust without losing themselves. That kind of confidence doesn't come from ego. It comes from experience. Experience of having fallen, gotten back up, and realizing that even at their lowest, they had value. Inner strength isn't visible until it's tested. It shows up in moments of pressure, loss, or uncertainty. It reveals itself not in how loudly someone speaks, but in how quietly they hold themselves together when everything else is falling apart. And this quiet power is what makes others take notice, because in a world full of overreaction, the person who doesn't flinch stands out. This kind of composure is not born from pretending that nothing affects you. It's built by learning how to feel deeply without being consumed. It's knowing how to navigate intense emotion without letting it dictate the next move. The people who appear strongest are often not the ones who feel the least. They're the ones who have learned to carry what they feel with intention. The difference between reacting and responding is everything. A reaction is instant, it's emotional, it's driven by a need to release, to defend, to strike. But a response is thoughtful, it's grounded. It's the result of stepping back, observing, understanding, and then choosing the next move. One is impulsive, the other is wise. It's such empowering work. And that distinction is what separates chaos from leadership. Anyone can react. It doesn't take discipline to snap back when insulted, to raise your voice when challenged, or to walk away when uncomfortable. Those things are easy. What's difficult is the pause, the breath, the willingness to sit in the tension for a moment longer to see what's really happening, to ask, what outcome do I want here, instead of how do I defend myself? That's what responding looks like. Responding requires self-awareness, and self-awareness begins with curiosity. Instead of asking what's wrong with this situation, people with inner strength ask, what is this situation revealing in me? That one shift changes everything. It transforms challenges into lessons. It turns criticism into growth. It reframes tension as a chance to lead instead of just survive. The more a person learns to respond rather than react, the more influence they gain. Not because they speak more, but because what they say carries weight. Their words don't come from a need to win, but from a desire to understand. And in a world that's constantly shouting, calm voices are the ones that actually get heard. Responding also builds relationships. Reactions tend to escalate tension, while responses tend to defuse it. When someone is calm, they give the other person permission to calm down too. That doesn't mean conflict disappears. It means it becomes productive. It's no longer about proving who's right. It becomes about understanding what went wrong and how to move forward. What's important to understand is that calm doesn't mean passive. It doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It means choosing your battles. It means recognizing the difference between what needs your energy and what doesn't. Not everything deserves a reaction. Some things only require a quiet decision. To let go, to walk away, or to wait. The ability to respond rather than react creates long-term power, because reactive people burn out quickly. Their emotional spikes drain them. Their constant need to control or correct every situation leaves them exhausted. But those who respond from a place of clarity conserve their energy. They don't waste it on arguments that don't matter or emotions that don't last. Inner strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look for recognition. It simply stands firm. And the more someone lives from that place, the less they need to prove. The less they fear being misunderstood. The less they crave control. That's when true peace begins. Not the kind that depends on everything going right, but the kind that endures when everything feels wrong. The person who has learned to respond has also learned to lead, because leadership isn't about titles or authority. It's about emotional influence. It's about setting the tone, about modeling the behavior you want to see. And when people see someone stay grounded under pressure, they don't just admire it, they want to follow it. Not because they're told to, but because they trust it. The path to that kind of strength is not glamorous. It involves silence, reflection, owning mistakes, learning emotional patterns, practicing restraint when every part of you wants to explode. It's not always visible, but over time it creates results that speak for themselves. Relationships that last, decisions that work, teams that trust, and a self that doesn't crumble when tested. It's easy to talk about strength, much harder to live it when no one's watching. When your pride is hurt, when your patience is tested, when things feel unfair, But that's when the real work happens. That's when the muscle of calm is built. Not by avoiding hard moments, but by moving through them with grace and clarity. Every time you choose response over reaction, you teach your nervous system that it's safe to pause, that you don't need to fight every battle, that stillness is not weakness. And over time, that becomes your default setting, not because life gets easier, but because you've trained yourself to handle it better. And that's what makes you unshakable, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it, not the denial of struggle, but the wisdom to move through it without losing who you are. Growth doesn't happen in noise. It doesn't emerge from chaos, and it can't be forced through pressure. Growth, real growth, starts in silence. It begins in the moments when no one is watching, when the phone is off, when the expectations fall away. In that stillness, we confront who we are, not who we perform to be, not who we are online, who we are underneath the roles and the noise. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's the birthplace of awareness. When we are alone, truly alone, the mask drops. We're no longer playing a part for someone else, and that's where the most difficult conversations begin, not with others, but with ourselves. The ones we avoid in the rush of daily life, the ones we silence with distraction. Solitude gives us access to those conversations. A calm person isn't someone who simply mastered their temper. It's someone who's spent time getting to know their mind. They've sat with discomfort long enough to understand what triggers them. They've faced their pain instead of burying it. They've walked into their own fears and stayed there long enough to find clarity. That's what solitude offers. Not comfort, but truth. And with truth comes clarity. With clarity comes power. This is the space where real self-growth happens. Not in the spotlight, not in the moments when things are going well. It happens when we pull away from the world and give ourselves the space to hear what's beneath the surface. It's in the silence that patterns emerge. We start to notice the stories we've been repeating, the beliefs we've adopted without question, the fears that have shaped our decisions. Solitude gives us the space to untangle all of it. In a noisy world, stillness is an act of rebellion, but it's also the foundation of emotional intelligence. You can't lead others if you're at war with yourself. You can't support others if you're unaware of your own blind spots. The person who's committed to calm isn't just managing stress, they're managing truth. They're building a relationship with it, and that relationship gets stronger every time they choose quiet over reaction, reflection over judgment. It's easy to stay busy. It's easy to surround yourself with activity and mistake it for purpose. But activity isn't growth. Movement isn't progress. Real growth requires stillness, and stillness requires courage. Because when the noise fades, we're forced to feel. We're forced to see what's been buried under all the noise. And for many, that's the scariest part. But for those who lean into it, something powerful happens. They stop reacting to the world and start responding from within it. The person who values solitude begins to listen not just to their thoughts, but to their inner voice. And over time, that voice becomes stronger than the noise outside. It begins to guide decisions. It begins to shape behavior. And eventually, that person stops needing external validation to feel whole. They've built a compass inside, a sense of self that doesn't wobble with circumstance. There's a certain freedom that comes from knowing yourself deeply, from trusting your own voice more than the opinion of the crowd, from acting with integrity, not popularity. Calm people don't just stay cool under pressure, they stay aligned. They don't chase applause, they chase alignment with their values. And that's why their peace is unshakable, because it's not built on public opinion, it's built on inner work. This level of self-trust is what allows people to operate with consistency. In crisis, they don't fall apart. In disagreement, they don't attack. They've made peace with who they are, and because of that, they don't get pulled into every emotional tug of war. That peace isn't natural. It's built. It's practiced. And the practice happens in solitude. Once you begin doing that inner work, something else starts to change. You become less reactive, less emotionally hijacked, less driven by fear or insecurity. Your sense of calm isn't a performance. It becomes your state of being, and when others come near it, they feel it. That energy is contagious. It gives permission for others to slow down, to listen, to think, to be. This is what makes calm people effective leaders, not because they're always the loudest in the room, but because they're often the most centered. And you can't fake centeredness. You can mimic confidence, you can even manufacture enthusiasm, but calm is something else. It's earned. It's the result of inner alignment practiced over time. And yet, even after doing the work, people will test your calm. Life will test your calm. Being unshakable doesn't mean you won't feel frustration, sadness, or fear. It means you'll know how to meet those emotions with presence instead of panic. You'll allow them to pass through without letting them take over. This emotional agility is what gives calm people their strength. They're not rigid, they're fluid. They know how to bend without breaking. To reach that point, people must learn to manage the internal dialogue. Every day, thoughts rise, some helpful, some harmful. And the calm person doesn't try to shut them all down. They observe, they sift, they separate what's true from what's old fear speaking. This is mental discipline, not silencing the mind, but mastering which voices to believe. That practice of discernment becomes easier over time, and as it does, emotions lose their grip. Not because they're gone, but because they're no longer the only voice in the room. There's now a wiser voice, a calmer one that doesn't overreact to temporary pain, one that sees the long game, one that's grounded in principles, not pressure. This kind of thinking turns obstacles into teachers. It reframes failure as feedback. It allows people to remain steady even when things don't go their way. Because they're no longer trying to control outcomes, they're focused on controlling who they become in the process. That's real growth. That's real strength. And here's something else calm people understand. Self-growth is never complete. There's no final arrival. It's a continual practice, a series of choices. The decision to pause when others rush, to reflect when others judge, to stay when others escape. Calm people live in that practice. They don't pretend to be perfect. They just remain committed. And that commitment, over time, becomes a way of life. They begin to see life less as a competition and more as a classroom. Less as something to conquer and more as something to understand. This shift transforms relationships, careers, and leadership because when someone stops needing to prove themselves, they start focusing on improving themselves. That improvement is rooted in patience, not just with others, but with self. Growth doesn't happen in straight lines. It loops, it stalls, it tests you. But calm people don't rush the process. They trust the process because they know the outcome is not just about where they end up, but about who they become along the way. And it all comes back to that one decision: to pause, to breathe, to reflect, to listen, to choose calm when chaos is easier. That single choice, practiced daily, becomes the foundation of everything else. So the next time chaos knocks, don't answer with noise. When pressure rises, don't respond with panic. Choose the pause. Choose the breath. Choose the quiet strength that doesn't need to be seen to be real. The world will keep spinning fast. Let it. You are not here to match its speed. You are here to lead with stillness. And in a time when everyone is fighting to be heard, the calm ones will be the ones we follow, because in their silence, we finally hear the truth. And that's how calm people always win, not by overpowering the world, but by refusing to be overpowered by it.